I'm excited to talk to you about evocation and some of the ideas that you brought up in this particular section. The questions that came to my mind most in thinking about personal situations, not necessarily the children because I don't have some, but I can imagine in conversations my parents had with me and times when they would really try to listen and get to know my perspective, and then sort of how those played out.
Mm-hmm.
And then in friends and family and their children. And one of the pitfalls you mentioned was jumping in and kind of trying to tell somebody what to do too soon as being one of the big sort of barriers to...
Yeah, so if I start telling you what to do right now, how does it feel?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Spit it out. So the question is, how do, in trying to adopt these behaviors, brand new to some of these concepts, many of them, I can imagine our viewers wanting to know, well, they may not catch it right away. So if I'm in a conversation with my child and I'm really trying this new thing that I'm evoking more information from them and I'm doing pretty well, and then they say something that gets under my skin, or one of their answers is like, oh, I've just been waiting for you to say that one for a while, and then I'm locked in on, now I'm giving them direction, or now I'm just like, it's about convincing them that this particular idea or this response, something that I've been wanting them to do or think differently about or fix in their thinking. And I don't catch right away that I am totally not doing evoking anymore. How might I come back to it, I guess, once I have the presence of mind that I've left evocation behind? Any advice for how we might return to it when we're practicing these skills?
Yeah, the best thing always is once you catch it, just pause, stop, and change what you're doing. So if I stepped in and started telling somebody, oh, well, you know what you should be doing is, and then I catch myself, then I would just go, actually, you know what, let me ask, what do you think are the things that you might want to be doing here? Right? So I'm just going to stop, pause, and change my approach. Most people just appreciate it. They'll respond to the fact that you're asking them a question and respond appropriately.
Okay. I guess I'm kind of imagining, and maybe it's the same answer, but as you're saying that, some thoughts about getting my child to do homework, let's say. And it's been an area of contention before, so we're coming into territory where we've definitely been, and there's a history of maybe exchanging things that weren't nice and some shutting down, and me feeling very frustrated with my child, and them feeling very frustrated, angry, shutting down with me, not wanting to talk to me. And we're in this arena around homework. So now I start evoking some questions. I'm trying out this new thing of asking some more questions about what it is about their homework that they're not doing it now, or wanting to do it and getting it done in a timely manner. And then they give me one of their replies that I have a really hard time with. And then I launch into kind of trying to tell them how to fix it again.
Mm-hmm.
And they start to shut down. How could I recover and come back to knowing that I mean, as a parent, and even as not a parent myself, but if I imagine myself as a parent and thinking about applying this to other situations in my personal life, there'd be a tendency to think like, oh shoot, I blew it. Is there a way to, as you're suggesting, just shifting back to it recovers that situation, or is there something additional I might do?
If there's something I did, right, like I got really reactive and maybe I started snapping at him, so maybe I'm like, no, you have to listen to me, and I realize I spoke in a way that's probably not the best. I might just go, you know what, I'm sorry. That wasn't very nice for me to say. Right? Apologize, own our behavior. It gives a good example for our kids that it's okay to apologize and own our behaviors and correct them, and then correct it. And then we just go into the question of, actually, I'd like to hear more of what's going on. You appear really frustrated. Tell me what's happening here.
That's so disarming in its simplicity.
Yeah.
And seems very powerful.
more difficult than what you might think, though, right? And you're kind of highlighting that as we as humans, we do have things that might trigger us. I would always encourage this as kind of outside of evocation, but it's always a good thing as a parent to start identifying the things that trigger us and maybe work through those things, right? And disarm our own triggers. If we can get rid of our own triggers, it's easier the next time that something like that happens. Instead of reacting or having some outwardly expression that might be gruff or shut down a child, we might actually stop and use evocation or be curious in the situation and not take it necessarily personal that the child is trying to tear us down, that the child is just trying to use coping techniques to get some underlying need taken care of. If we can recognize that, we can stop, pause, and use some evocation to find out what's going on, right? And not take it personal, but go, well, what's happening here? Why are you getting so upset?
Yeah, I could imagine there may be areas where that'd be perhaps easier to admit an error, and then some areas where it might be a little more difficult for a parent to go like, oh shoot, okay, need to apologize here and come back and do that. But I also felt it as you modeled it, embodied it, how as a being on the receiving end of that would be very actually really welcoming to shift back to, okay, well, let's talk about it.
Yeah. And that's a great phrase that you just used right there. And a lot of times when you feel yourself get triggered, stop there and just ask that beautiful question you just asked. Let's talk about what's going on, right? It often diffuses things quickly. Some of what you're asking, though, like around this homework situation, might lead to a tough conversation, which we have a different video on. We talk about it in a single video about tough conversations, and we have it in the larger training when we talk about motivational parent. So, we talk about how to have those tough conversations. But even in that, when we teach about tough conversations, we still teach evocation, being curious. When we feel these things happen with a child, we want to go in and just start exploring what's going on. Doesn't mean they're not accountable.
Totally.
But we're just learning what's happening, right? They have a perspective and something going on that's causing these emotions, these feelings, these outbursts, whatever it is, and we can explore and discover that, because as we explore and discover it, then we can start moving into a place of, well, what do we do about this?
I think that's a little relieving to hear about the accountability piece, because I could find myself that some of the content sort of begging the question, well, am I just letting them off the hook? We're finding out how they feel about everything, but that's not what you're saying at all. There's actually, there's still plenty of room for that, and defining those things and talking about those expectations, and you mentioned in the context of tough conversations, but right now it's the curiosity.
Right. We're just trying to find out what's going on.
Okay.
Right? And just because the child says, I don't want to do my homework, doesn't mean that they're not. It doesn't mean we're not going to have that completed before the night's out. But we can still have a conversation about it and use evocation to explore what's going on. Right? Because once we know what's going on, it might be that, I had a situation with one of my kids one time where they, it was a side effect of what they did in class, but they didn't hear the lecture. They got distracted with some things, and so when they got home, they didn't understand how to do the homework assignment. So if I came down hard and said, I don't care, get your homework done, right? When they're saying, I don't want to do my homework, and I'm like, get your homework done. Well, what's really going on is they don't understand what to do, but they don't know how to convey that because we're caught in this trap of them versus me. But if I back off and just use evocation and start exploring what's going on, I might uncover, like I did with my son. So when I go to talk with my child about this, I can pull information and I might find out, they didn't listen in class, they don't quite understand what to do, so I can be a partner with them and guide them to how do we do this, and so I can help them, right? So if I find out that key piece through the evocation, we might be able to find out what to do and how to resolve some of the concerns or problems going on.
Thank you. That's it's a really easy example to connect to. So for those who, when I can appreciate that evocation has some skill to it. Because I find myself sort of reverting back to maybe one or two questions, ways of asking a question that I've heard you use, or just feels a little more natural to myself. What options are there for our viewers who are listening to this and want to apply this new skill, but maybe looking to get a little bit further guidance on how to use this with their children?
Well, practice is always encouraged.
Mm-hmm.
Start utilizing it, and it gets easier as you practice, because you'll find things that work and don't work, and you'll get better. Especially using open-ended questions when you're using Evocation. Also, go through the whole MI Lead training, the motivational parent training that will look at how does MI Lead concepts, skills, techniques, how do you use those to influence the way you're going to parent. The other thing is you could get consultation with us, and we can do a deep dive into what you're doing, what you could modify, teach you the skills, look at very specific situations you're running into, and do consultation around those and how to adopt these skills.
Great. Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.